I have absolute faith, he asserts over and over again, that anything can come to the one who trusts to the unlimited help of the universal intelligence that is within, so long as one works within the law and always gives more to others than they expect, and does it cheerfully and courteously. He early discovered that wealth may be more of a handicap than a help, because the comforts and the luxuries it can give sidetrack one's desire for a successful life, and develop instead a desire for ease. At any rate, none of the boys in the art academies in which he studied who had wealth amounted to much of anything. It is those who started with the realization that they must get to the top themselves because of their own initiative who have succeeded. Because of his versatility and love of doing many things at a time, he developed the feeling that he had 5 lives within his one. Each one of them, he said, seemed to be crying for recognition and the right to manifest itself. His life seemed to be divided into epochs of from 5 to 20 years each. Each new life became a transition from the one preceding it. Music, for example, financed his necessities for the 5 years of his art school days. He got $7.50 a week for playing a church organ at 13 years of age, $2 a week for playing the piano at Friday evening prayer meetings. He taught music at 50 cents a lesson, although he himself had but 3 months of musical instruction, and during one summer he conducted a 3-piece orchestra at a summer hotel. During this period, Paderewski accidentally heard him play some of his compositions. 30 years later, at a distinguished gathering of musicians in the studio of Sigbutsi, I can't pronounce that word, and Paderewski insisted that he play a certain one of his compositions, a waltz. Reluctantly, he played it, and Bushi Pesisi wrote it into manuscript. Excuse me about these names, I just can't pronounce them. Thus, this one waltz is the only one of his many compositions which has ever been recorded, except for a series of 5 which he sold for $100 to another musician to use under his own name. In his second transition, he was an illustrator for books and magazines. From 1897 to 1898, he was an art editor at Collier's Weekly, then became war artist and correspondent for Collier's and Century in the Spanish War. In 1900, he completed his allegorical painting entitled The Might of Ages, which was first exhibited in the Turin International Art Exposition, winning honorable mention from Italy, then exhibited throughout Europe, winning him many honors from France, Belgium, and Spain, including membership in the Spanish Academy of Arts and Letters. Portrait painting majored during the third transition. His principal instructors in art had been Albert Munsell and Ernest Major of Boston. At first he specialized in children. He painted the children of notables all over the country, including the children of President Theodore Roosevelt, Governor Ames of Massachusetts, Thomas Lawson, and many others. At the zenith of his fame as a child specialist, he was commissioned by the Ladies' Home Journal to select and tour America to paint the 12 most beautiful children in the country. In 1914, he ceased painting children and then executed many portraits of notables, including Archbishop Corrigan, Bishop Alexander G. Garrett, Sir Thomas Lipton, and there's a whole bunch more of them. During this period, he wrote The Bending of the Twig, Age of Innocence, The Universal One, The Russell Genero-Radiative Concept, Salutation to the Day, The Sea Children, and delivered hundreds of lectures. The biggest things he ever has done in his life have been done without preparation. He never, for example, studied architecture. He has a strong desire to build better studio buildings for artists, and so he designed a building for them. He designed and built $20 million worth of buildings in the city of New York, such as the Hotel des Artistes on West 67th Street, which is known the world over. And then there's quite a few others that all have names. I'm not going to even say that part. He also financed the building and sold all the stock, and even devised the legal possibilities of making a sound economic principle out of an ideal which was deemed unsound before. It was the principle of cooperative ownership, which for many succeeding years was acknowledged as a sound economical principle throughout the world. He conceived that principle. Lawyers said it couldn't be done, and the real estate men and bankers said it was ridiculous. He showed them the soundness of the principle, even though he knew nothing of man-made laws or finance. He knew universal law, however, and applied that law of balance in nature to man's law, and thus created an epoch in New York real estate dealings. He had a very hard time in procuring the first loan, but after 4 or 5 buildings had been erected, every financial institution in the city offered him all the money he wanted, and he built many notable buildings on that principle. Real estate operators then came along and destroyed the principle. They violated the universal law of balance between give and take. They looked at the product and the profit as the reality instead of upon the thought which created the product. They milked every operation for themselves and left only a liability for their cooperative clients. The result is that every cooperative building that he erected is profitable even today, and some of them are 45 years old, while practically all of those in which businessmen varied the principle to make more profit are failures. Short-sightedly, they killed a wonderful market and wrecked a cosmic ideal by increasing their immediate profits at the expense of their future ones. Incidentally, in doing this, they caused losses of many millions to investors who relied upon them. Then came the transition to sculpture. At 56 years of age, his change from painting to sculpture came about purely because of an accident. He had been a painter all his life and never had handled clay. He had become elected president of the Society of Arts and Sciences, and they were to give a medal to Edison. The artist who was to have done the portrait sculpturing for the medal failed them. So Walter Russell got some clay and wired to Mr. Edison that he would go and do it himself. To do such a thing as that, which requires a sudden change of medium from a familiar one to which the automatic reflexes of the body have been trained, to an unfamiliar one which required new skills, was like a violinist suddenly changing his instrument to a piano. It was very unwise for me to do, perhaps, because with such a great man as Edison as my subject, I might not have survived a failure, he remarked. But I never let the thought of failure enter my mind. My knowledge of my unity with the Universal One, and the fact that I must do this thing, and the inspired belief that I should do it, as a demonstration of my belief in man's unlimited power, made me ignore the difficulties that lay in the way. So I went to Florida with a mass of clay, but on my way down I spent the entire time absorbed in inspirational meditation with the universal source of all inspiration, in order to fully realize the omnipotence of the self within me as a preparation for doing in a masterly way what I would otherwise be unable to do. The result was one of the greatest mileposts in my career. If I had followed the usual procedure of the superficially minded man and played bridge all the way down to Florida, or otherwise enslaved my mind by sidetracking it from its creative purpose in order to entertain that great aggregation of sensed corpuscles which I call my body, instead of approaching the mountainous hurdle with reverence and insulation of mind from body demands, I know I would have failed. In fact, I knew in advance from long experience in trying to achieve the unachievable that meditation and communion between myself and the universal self was the only way to achieve that impossibility.